and abused by police. And as of right now, the city has apparently reached an agreement in principle to resolve the constitutional violations found by the DOJ investigation. So, Sharon, problem solved, I assume.
Yeah, I want to know if these 3%ers came to work in red hats and if they all asked off on January 6th. Did they get vacation leave on January 6th? Again, ridiculous. And when you talk about keeping a community safe while you're going after taillights and racial profiling people, you are letting those sexual assault, unsolved crimes, issues that actually do affect greater society go unsolved. You know, as a journalist in newsrooms for years, they would have racial profiling. They take the police report and suddenly it would end up in the teleprompter. And I would never read it, okay? Because what you're also doing, it didn't just offend me as a Black person. It offended me because you're not helping anyone while you're going after every Black person, okay, with braids. The person who actually perpetrated the crime is going free. So I have many questions here, and I don't know that Merrick Garland's efforts here, perhaps noble, are going to make a difference, greater society globally. And I think that's the rub. We know as we sit here, and it doesn't matter what you achieve economically, greater heights you go to, when you are a certain segment of society, these announcements come and you know things aren't gonna get better for us. And that's the problem here.
Well, I think, like, to your point, like specifically about how they're not gonna care to track down, for instance, you know, the perpetrator of sexual assault. That's the sexual assaults that actually get reported. But if you've been living in this place where there is so much bias and targeting of segments of the population, are you as likely to even bother reporting it in this place when you have very little reason to believe throughout your life that they're gonna have your back, that they're gonna take it seriously, that they're gonna give you a fair shake in terms of investigation? I assume that the horrific numbers for how the percentage that assaulted those is actually an undercount, because I have a feeling people don't want to even engage with the system.
Yeah, particularly, I think you're right, particularly when you left out one thing, or they're gonna flip the script on you. And see, let me search your house. Let me see what's going on. What are you doing? You know?
Yeah.
And why are you calling us? You must be up to something, because that's an experience too that happens all too often.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's Louisville, and I wish I could say that that's the only terrible look into policing that we got in the last 24 hours, but it's not. We have more, and so let's talk about this. There have now been indictments against 11 former and current officers, some of whom were already facing charges in East Cleveland as a result of an investigation into bias, again, in targeting by the police, as well as persistent abuse and violence. We're not gonna show you all of what was revealed in the last day, but I do wanna just show you one clip, an indication, I think just a window into how some of these cops see their role in society. Take a look at this.
That bitch. Stop. Hang on. Get his ass, boy. Get his ass, boy. Don't get this thing. You can't drive or run.
Nice little ass whooping.
Should have resisted.
What are you supposed to do with police? Every single second of that was, I understand, they woke up and they put on a uniform and they had a shiny badge and they're legally allowed to carry a gun. None of that matters. We know exactly who that type of person is. Just so eager to beat the hell out of someone that comes up on a person who's literally lying on the ground, poses absolutely zero threat, and then delights on beating them. It is the same exact thing as if they had just poured out of the back of a Chevy pickup truck to jump someone that they came across after an incident at a bar, it is exactly the same thing. Delighting in doling out violence against someone who can't defend themselves, is posing absolutely no threat. Then chuckling about it, so happy to have beaten someone, and then lying to each other. Shouldn't have resisted. There was no resisting. There was literally no resistance whatsoever, and you know it. And that was just one of many bits of video revealed by, this is Michael O'Malley, prosecutor for the county there. Sharon, what do you think?
I think that these were gangs. That's what it's called. This is organized crime. Let's be clear again about the term here. Organized, violent crime on the streets of East Cleveland. And I worked in Cleveland for many years, so I'm familiar with the goings on there, and nothing's changed. And for the city council in East Cleveland to now step before the mic, John, and beg, they're begging, help us, we only have 20 active police officers. Listen, it might be a good thing for the citizens of East Cleveland. They might be a little bit safer today. I can say that based on what you just showed and the numbers indicted, okay? Because you talked about rape victims not wanting to come forward, sexual assault. This is all we know. What about what we don't know here? I think there's a lot more to uncover.
You know what I think of when I see things like that? Like I see a video like that and I immediately get like so down, like again, how do you reform a system like this? And how do you live in a country where a significant percentage of regular people out there don't care that this is happening at all because they believe that it won't affect them or the sort of person they are. How do you reform something like this when we cannot come together as a society to at least admit that it's a problem? But then I think, like when they'll talk about deploying like robots for law enforcement, like San Francisco or something. LAPD is apparently getting like a robot dog. And there's a lot of concerns about that. But one is, so what about the programming of it? Who's programming these things? What sorts of biases are they putting into the software? And we get concerned about that, and rightfully so. Then I think it's easy to do that with a robot. Are we any better? Who programmed that cop that you heard yelling, get his ass? Who boy? Who programmed him? What was being fed into his programming as he was growing socially, like in terms of the news coverage, political commentary, the things he was hearing in his everyday life? Because it produced something that was pretty sick, as bad as I could imagine any robot doing. It would be very difficult to get a robot to do what you just saw in that video. And yet American society programs an endless stream of young, angry, almost always, but not always. Sometimes there's diversity in police brutality, but often young, white, male cops who are ready to just get into a gang, a literal one, the sort of one that you're talking about, or even just a group of guys pouring out of a squad car to beat the hell out of someone who can't defend themselves. I'm worried about their programming too.
Yeah, and it's the color blue. That's their gang color. It's usually dark blue, okay? And they carry the same issued weapons. I think we need to show more of the underbelly here, because you're so right about the media. I get it. We shape hearts and minds, okay? I fought that fight in newsrooms every single day. Who's in the little room that decides what we're gonna cover? Who decides what we're not gonna cover? Oh, well, that's just a drug crime code for it. Black people killed, move on. Let's go out to Cobb County in the suburbs. Let's do things that white people care about. That's what you're really saying. And you reinforce, no matter the color, how people feel about themselves, how they believe their promises in America, where it ends, okay? Some people it's just beginning, other places it ends before you even leave the neighborhood block, okay? So you're right, America, this is your prescription and it's written to all of us. And the only way to unpack it is perhaps to throw out the system. Stop saying things like, well, defund the police is too far. Let's unpack what it really means. Let's start over. Let's learn the history of policing in America, because you cannot move forward until you know where you've been.
Yeah. It's a great final point. I'm going to leave it there. I'm glad that we've gotten these looks into the police, and glad that some of these cops are going to be charged or whatever. We'll see what ends up happening to them. But it's just, again, it's like it's choosing a few to identify. But then what are we left with? So in any event, we're going to take our first break. We come back. We're going to jump to continued fallout from the revelations from the Dominion versus Fox News lawsuit.